evacuate the building. Oh, great. Thank you. Sorry. I was listening to my own voice. I didn't realize people can hear me. If we need to evacuate the building, please proceed very calmly through the glass doors. There are exits to the left past the pillar. If that's obstructed in any way, there are 4 exits here, and please do not take the elevators. It's probably not a good idea. I'd also like to highlight that we do have a defibrillator at the end of the hallway if anyone needs it. And I'd like to acknowledge that we are hosting today's council meeting on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and I do want to thank them for their generosity and their hospitality and the love and the care that they show this land that we get to live, work, and play on. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to unlearn what we've learned in the past and learn the true history as to what's happened on these lands. And tell you, if we do that, we are going to build an incredibly prosperous future full of love and opportunity for all of us and our kids and our grandkids. I also want to recognize all the efforts of our amazing team members at the City of Vancouver. Stating the obvious, we've said it countless times, our people at the City of Vancouver, we're super proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with you, with them. They really care about our city and they work incredibly hard, and just so thankful that they're part of the team. So clerk, can we please have a roll call?
Mayor Simon, the chair, has a leave of absence for personal business 4 to 7 p.m. Councillor Carr? Councillor Kirby-Young? Councillor Dominato? Councillor Bly? Councillor Boyle? Councillor Fry? Councillor Montague?
Present.
Councillor Klassen? Councillor Meisner? And Councillor Zhou.
Present.
You have quorum, Mayor Sim.
Great, thank you very much. Any comments on agenda items can be sent to council using the web form on the city's website. The link to that form will be tweeted out on @VanCityClerk. I also want to note the City of Vancouver's longstanding commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, including the utmost respect for all genders. I remind council that when addressing speakers and the city's team members, we will avoid using gendered honorifics and instead refer to the person by first and last name, role, or title. Today we have 3 administrative items: in-camera motion, adoption of minutes, and matters adopted on consent. 8 reports, 6 referral reports, 11 bylaws, 1 administrative motion, notice of council member motions, new business, and inquiries and other matters. The plan for today, we're going to break at noon for lunch, followed by the in-camera meeting. We will return at 3 p.m. to continue to deal with the remainder of the agenda and complete the agenda by 5 p.m. as we have a public hearing at 6 p.m. I would also like to give notice that pursuant to section 164.12 of the Vancouver Charter, that council will give consideration to amend procedure bylaw number 12577 at the October 31st, 2023 council meeting. I have no idea what that means, but it sounds pretty exciting. In camera, sorry. Council is required to meet in camera later this week. The reasons and authority under the Vancouver Charter are listed in the agenda. Would someone like to move a motion to go in camera later this week? Great, thank you, Councillor Klassen, and seconded by Councillor Dominato. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Minutes. Minutes 1 are from the public hearing on September the 28th, 2023. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Great. So would someone like to move adoption? Great. Councillor Joe, seconded by Councillor Bly. All those in favor? All those opposed? Great. Carries. Minutes 2 are from the council meeting on October the 3rd, 2023. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Great. Would someone like to move a motion? Great. Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Klassen. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. Passes unanimously. Minutes 3 are from the council meeting following the Standing Committee on Policy and Strategic Priorities meeting of October the 4th, 2023. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Great. Councillor Kirby-Young, seconded by Councillor Bly. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. The motion carries unanimously. Minutes 4 are from the Auditor General Committee meeting on October the 5th, 2023. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Great. Moved by Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Joe. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, passes unanimously. Okay, matters adopted on consent. Council will now consider matters adopted on consent. We have reports 2 through 7 and referral reports 1 through 6 on the consent agenda for council's consideration. Report 8 is being held to hear from speakers. Council may adopt the recommendations for reports 2 through 7 and referral reports 1 through 6 on consent. Does any member wish to hold any of the items for debate or questions to team members? Sorry, is there anyone in the queue? 2 through 7. Okay, sorry, I got to rewind back here. So referral reports 2 through 7? Sorry. Okay, so we're back on track. It was moved by Councillor Bly. Moved by, seconded by Councillor Dominato. Does any member wish to declare a conflict of interest on the consent items? And I believe so. Do you have to cede the chair, or I can just declare a conflict, right? So I'd like to declare, out of an abundance of caution, I want to declare a conflict on appointment of external auditor for 2024. The auditor will be KPMG, and a couple of the companies that I'm a shareholder in hires KPMG to do audit and tax work. So I'll be recusing myself from that one. Anyone else? No? Okay, so let me go back. Okay, so we have reports 2 through 7 and referral reports 1 through 6 for the consent approval. Would someone like to move adoption of the recommendations before? Sorry? Oh, we did that. All right, great. And that was seconded. So all those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. So the following have been approved on consent. Okay. So report number 2, appointment of external auditor for 2024. Report number 3, Auditor General Committee recommendations transmittal report. Report number 4, 9 West Cordova Street Older Hotel modification to Heritage Revitalization Agreement, HRA, and approval of single room accommodation SRA conversion permit. Report number 5, 1218 East Georgia Street, single room accommodation, SRA, bylaw exemption application and removal of designation. Number 6, whistleblower policy update. And number 7, directions report, consideration of modification to conditions of approval, 1450 West Georgia Street, 1157 Burrard Street, and 1680 to 1690 Alberni Street. We also have referral reports 1 through 6. So number 1 is CD-1 rezoning 430 to 440 West Pender Street. Number 2 is CD-1 rezoning 3231 to 3245 Fraser Street and 675 East 17th Avenue. Number 3, CD-1 rezoning 1510 West 71st Avenue and 8733 Granville Street. Number 4, rezoning 3529 to 3589 Arbuda Street and 2106 West 19th Avenue. Number 5, CD-1 rezoning 5515 to 5525 Elizabeth Street. And referral report number 6, rezoning 6065 to 6075 Callingwood Place. All right. So reports. Report number 2, appointment of external auditor for 2024. Oh, sorry, I should have just read that. Would have been a lot easier. Okay. Okay, so at the request of team members, I am suggesting we vary the order of the agenda to deal with the bylaws next to provide sufficient time for posting yellow memos related to items on tonight's public hearing. Would someone like to move to vary the agenda? Great, Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Kirby Young. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Sorry, Councillor Kirby Young, I see you on the queue here. Did I miss something or?
I was just waiting to get to the referral reports. I wanted
Okay.
to hold 6 for a question.
All right. Bylaws. We have 11 bylaws on the agenda for enactment. Bylaw number 2 must be voted on and enacted before.
We just we haven't voted.
Named them all.
You named them.
We passed the bylaws already? No, yeah, the referral report. We haven't done the bylaws yet. No.
Sorry, can I just ask a point of clarification of the chair? I heard you read the reports, but I didn't believe we voted
Sorry, I
yet.
can't hear you.
So I just want to ask you a point of clarification. I heard you read the addresses for the referral reports, but I didn't understand we'd voted yet because I'm on the queue to pull referral report 6. So
Okay.
just looking for clarification.
So, great. So we're rewind back here a little bit. Give me a moment.
Of course. Yeah.
Started reading. We don't usually do referrals. The actual reports won't speak.
Yeah.
Started.
So we have to rewind back. So
Referrals and read them.
I have to ask for us to rescind that vote and then we go through the whole thing again. Sorry.
I didn't think we actually.
Sorry, I apologize. Hello? Hi. So, Councillor Kirby Young was on the queue. I misunderstood where she was, so I apologize for that. If we can rescind the vote that we just voted on and then hold number 6 and then pass everything again with 6 being held. Is that correct? That's what we need to do?
Mayor, could I ask a point of clarification? I did hear you read the addresses for the referral reports, but I did not recall you calling a vote on it. I heard us call a vote on the reports earlier, but I don't believe that we had voted on the referral reports yet. We have.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, so we do have to rescind.
But,
Thanks
you
for
know,
the-
I'll own this one because you were in the queue. I misunderstood.
Okay, no problem. Thank you for the clarification.
If that's okay, everyone, if we can just, you know, for Councillor Kirby Young, because she was in the queue, can we please reconsider? We'll hold number 6. We'll vote on everything, and then 6 will be held. Okay, so that's moved by Councillor Joe, seconded by Councillor Dominato. All those in favor of rescinding the vote that we just had, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Great. So now we are holding number 6. Sorry, clerk, sorry, do we pass everything first? Okay, so we talk about 6 and then. Okay. All right, so bear with me 1 sec here. Yeah. Sorry, if you can just bear with me for 1 sec here. When I can figure out when did we hold? What did we?
Page 6.
I'm more concerned, where do we add the referral report to talk about?
You'll get to it when you get put on the agenda.
Do you know where that is?
You do bylaws. You report one.
Can you do me a favor? I'll go through this. If you can show me where to slip it in after, that's great.
No, just so you're back.
Sorry about that, everyone. Okay, so we. Okay, so we have report. Okay, so. Okay. So I think we are back on track. So we have reports 2 through 7 and referral reports 1 through 5 for the consent approval. Would someone like to move adoption for the recommendations before council? Great. Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Meisner. All those in favor say yay. Yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. The motion carries unanimously. So the following have been approved on consent. Report number 2, appointment of external auditor for 2024. Report number 3, Auditor General Committee recommendations transmittal report. Report number 4, 9 West Cordova Street, Boulder Hotel, modification to Heritage Revitalization Agreement, HRA, and approval of single room accommodation SRA conversion permit. Report number 5, 1218 East Georgia Street, single room accommodation SRA bylaw exemption application and removal of designation. Report number 6, whistleblower policy update. And report number 7, directions report, consideration of modification to conditions of approval, 1450 West Georgia Street, 1157 Burrard Street, and 1680 to 1690 Alberni Street. We also have referral reports 1 through 5. So number 1 is CD-1 rezoning 430 to 440 West Pender Street. Number 2, CD-1 rezoning 3231 to 3245 Fraser Street and 675 East 17th Avenue. Referral report number 3, CD-1 rezoning 1510 West 71st Avenue and 8733 Granville Street. Referral report number 4, rezoning 3529 to 3589 Arbutus Street and 2106 West 19th Avenue. And referral report number 5, CD-1 rezoning 5515 to 5525 Elizabeth Street. And so once again, do I have to go through at the request of our team members? Yeah, okay, so we varied that, that's fine. Okay, thank you, sorry for that, and thank you for bearing with me. Okay, bylaws, we have 11 bylaws on the agenda for enactment. Bylaw number 2 must be voted on and enacted before we can vote on bylaws 3 through 8. I recommend that we vote on bylaws 1, 2, and 9 to 11 first, then go back and vote on bylaws 3 through 8. Would someone... Yeah, by the way, we varied the order to do bylaws now. Awesome. Would someone like to move the motion to adopt bylaws 1, 2, and 9 through 11? Great. Seconded by Councillor Bly and moved by Councillor Dominato. Okay. Council, is there any discussion? So seeing no one in the queue there, all those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Would someone like to move the motion to adopt bylaws 3 through 8? Great, Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Bly. Council, is there any discussion? Great, all those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. The list of approved bylaws can be found on the city's website. Reports held for speakers, debate, questions to team members, or a separate vote. Okay, so there are 2 reports that were held for speakers. Report number 1, Chinese Society Legacy Program and Special Enterprise Program Grant Allocations, 2023. Does any member wish to declare a conflict of interest on this item? Great. Okay. Okay, council, you have up to 5 minutes to ask questions of team members. Are there, well, I guess we should do the presentation first, shouldn't we? Sure. Sure. Pardon? Is there, do we want to see the presentation? Yeah, all right. Let's see the presentation.
Does the presentation come up on the screen? Great. Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Tyler, and I sit with the Reconciliation and Cultural Change team within PDS. I'm here today to present on the Chinese Society Legacy Program and the Downtown Eastside Special Enterprise Program grant allocations for 2023. Firstly, moving on to the recommendation slide. Firstly, that Council approved $685,113 in grant allocations to the 10 Chinese societies to support the retention of society-owned heritage buildings within Chinatown, and these funds would be coming from the approved 2015 Chinese Society Legacy Program. And secondly, that Council approve a separate $35,000 grant allocation to the Vancouver Chinatown Merchants Association for capacity building and supports to the Chinatown legacy businesses. And these funds would be coming from the approved 2023 multi-year Downtown Eastside Special Enterprise Program. To provide a little bit of context on the next slide, in 2015, Council approved the Chinese Society Legacy Program to support the rehabilitation of 12 society heritage buildings within Chinatown. The intent of this was to support the 12 buildings that were on the Heritage Register owned by society buildings with nonprofit status at the time. The allocation of these funds represents the final phase of a successful completion of the Chinese Society Legacy Program, as well as the continued implementation of the Downtown Eastside Special Enterprise Program. In terms of the grant allocations on the next slide, there are 10 grants that are recommended for council approval for the Chinese Society Legacy Program. And as you can see on the map shown there, a majority of those fall within the Pender Corridor within HA1 zoning of Chinatown. There is, however, one grant that is not being recommended for council approval, and that's due to the fact that it did not meet the eligibility criteria of the program due to funding being used towards a building not listed as one of the 12 eligible buildings on the Heritage Register at the time of the program's creation. In addition, there's one grant allocation for the Vancouver Chinatown Merchants Association, and this will be used for the further implementation of the Special Enterprise Program. And so on the final slide, in conclusion, the Chinese Society Legacy Program as well as the Special Enterprise Program both advance previous council decisions such as the Chinatown Cultural Heritage Assets Management Plan, the Uplifting Chinatown Action Plan, and the continued support of Chinatown community and businesses. These grant allocations will support the retention of heritage buildings, key cultural assets, and the strategic planning for the retention of legacy businesses within Chinatown. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Council, you have up to 5 minutes to ask questions of team members. Are there any questions? And I see Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just very quick printout, Appendix A, number 6, Hongsing Athletic Club, the Chinese translation, the Chinese name is not correct. I flagged this to the city manager already. And we need to correct that, make the document publicly corrected. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That has been changed since the comment made yesterday, so that was edited last night. Just a point of clarification, both items 6 and 7 within the appendix are both owned by the Wong's Benevolent Association, but the Chinese name has been corrected. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Right, seeing no one else on the queue. Now, we are now going to hear, we're going to move to hear from the members of the public. Before we begin, I'd like to remind council and members of the public that in accordance with the updates to the procedure bylaw that were enacted at the May 10th council meeting, public speakers may only speak up to 3 minutes and council may not ask questions of speakers. Public speakers should state whether they are in support or in opposition of the recommendations and may only speak once. I will also ask speakers if they are residents of Vancouver, if it is not noted on the speakers list. Our first speaker, or first public speaker, is William Liu.
Good morning, councillors and Mr. Mayor. My name is William Liu, and I'm the second generation owner and operator of Callingwood Dim Sum at 249 East Pender Street. We recognize that our business is located on the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. We believe Black, Indigenous, and LGBTQ2+ communities are important and are vital in their contributions to Chinatown's culture, to Vancouver, and to our society at large, and we expressly welcome members of these communities as a part of our family. Kamwai has been in our Chinatown since 1991, for over 32 years. Before Kamwai, my family also ran a bakery named Long Fong on Kiefer Street and an antique shop on Gore Avenue. I'm also a director on the board of the Vancouver Chinatown Merchants Association, also known as VCMA. The VCMA, excuse me, was founded in 1981 as a collective voice for Chinatown businesses. Our organization's history is rooted in community activism, dating back to the barbecue meat protests of the 1980s that saw current owner of Dollar Meats, Joey Wong's father, and other current director of VCMA, Henry Tom's father, fight to the Capitol in order for us to continue to serve delicious barbecue meats in our own country. We believe in advocating for Chinatown merchants who have been and continue to be the cultural fabric of Chinatown, providing cultural goods and services for the low-income seniors that live in our community. In recent years, VCMA has lost the majority of legacy business membership, but are still very strong in spirit and continue to lead with purpose and are looking to define our association through a strategic planning process that will hopefully build up a new membership and redefine what it means to be a legacy business in our beloved Chinatown. We are confident that through your support on this special enterprise program, we can continue to strengthen the connections between businesses, culture, and our community, and continue to support and retain our legacy businesses in Chinatown. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good seeing you again. Okay, this is the end of.
To move the recommendations, and I have.
Okay. Just jumping ahead here. All right, so that's the end of the speakers list. And the motion's been moved by Councillor Kirby-Young and seconded by Councillor Carr. Council, is there any discussion? And Councillor Kirby-Young, are you in the queue again? Yeah, okay. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I really appreciate the update and the overview from staff, and I think that, as we heard from William, who was a recipient for Kamwai Dim Sum, we're able to retain legacy and generational businesses like that in Chinatown, and they add so much to the vibrancy of the neighborhood and the area. So it's rewarding to read about the program, but it was also concerning to read that when this was formed in 2015, that the current report represents the final tranche of funding, and there isn't any direction that is provided in this report with respects to what that future looks like. And it's so I do have an amendment to propose. I don't know if the mayor wants to move this to an amendment queue, and then I'll speak to the context.
All right, moving to the amendment queue.
I'll let the clerk bring that up, but really this amendment is intended to chart a path forward in terms of not having a gap in this work and in the program. And I think the report identifies two things, that the ongoing investment has been really imperative in terms of accessing spaces that otherwise are not sort of sufficiently functional for businesses like Camway Dim Sum to operate out of, or maintaining safety and comfort. For seniors, they often provide affordable housing in these legacy areas. They provide valuable social activities. And so it's the interim support, but it also identifies that we have the bigger pressing need around full-scale rehabilitation of this stock and don't have a plan for that. And that's not going to be possible without the support of senior levels of government. And I think that that's something that needs to be quantified. So there's a few parts to this amendment. The first one, and I'll just paraphrase rather than reading all of it, is that council affirms that the owned buildings serve as an invaluable physical representation of the area's community and history, and that there is, as I said, a pressing need for full-scale rehabilitation of the aging society heritage buildings.
Yeah, we all felt the same way, so yeah. Please carry on.
Okay, no problem. Thanks for that. The next point refers to asking staff to report back on the scale of investment at a very high level that would be needed to pursue that full-scale rehabilitation of the society-owned buildings, and if needed, any resources that would be required to provide a high-level costing on the scope of work. The third, and that essentially is in an effort to identify what is the level of funding we would actually need to really fully and seriously rehabilitate these critical assets that are part of Chinatown. And as the city has determined to pursue a UNESCO designation, it would be very difficult to do that if our society buildings have essentially decayed. The third part of it is asking staff to come back with recommendations to council on advocacy to senior governments for the funding for that rehabilitation, and additionally, the opportunity to continue the legacy program in the upcoming 4-year capital plan that begins in 2026. And the final clause speaks to the opportunity within the funding envelope of the current capital plan to continue this legacy program in 2024, 25, and 2026. So just to be clear, this is not asking to increase the capital plan. This is asking for opportunities. We often have mid capital plan adjustments. We sometimes have projects that for pacing reasons or whatever the case is, they don't proceed necessarily at the scale that we want, and we have opportunities to do reallocations sometimes with those sort of mid-plan adjustments. And so really looking to see, is there an opportunity in the short term to continue doing that smaller rehabilitation work while we look at the longer-term rehabilitation of the stock? And so that is the scope of the amendment.
Second?
Okay, so that was made by Councillor Kirby-Young, seconded by Councillor Bly. And so is there any discussion? And I see Councillor Joe. Oh, you're in the queue.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So I'll be quick. So I'd like to support this amendment. I think this ongoing support of heritage buildings in Chinatown holds significant importance, extending beyond the final allocation in this report. These buildings are collective memory for generations, including stories, artifacts, and traditions. Ongoing support ensure that this valuable repository of history is maintained or protected for future generations. Yeah, with that, I'd like to, I really thank Councillor Kirby-Young for bringing forward this amendment. 100% support this amendment. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Boyle.
Thanks. Also, really happy to support it and appreciate Councillor Kirby-Young doing the work to draft this. I would just request that we circulate longer amendments a bit earlier if possible so that we can give them a read and aren't receiving them right when they're tabled. That's helpful, but appreciate this work. Happy to support this. And since we weren't able to ask questions of the speaker, also just want to note the important work that William and others have been doing on this for so long. And my son eats Camway dim sum for school lunch every week. So happy to have worlds colliding like that, and happy to see this work continue. Thanks.
The dim sum is actually quite yummy.
Excellent.
There, so,
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Meisner.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mayor. Also very supportive of this amendment, recognizing the importance of maintaining these buildings and the significant costs associated with rehabilitation as well as preservation of the buildings in the neighborhoods. So very important, obviously, to continue that into future years and not just for pilot programs. So thanks very much to Councillor Kirby-Young for bringing this forward. And I think this is great news for Chinatown and all Vancouverites.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carr?
Yeah, I too am very supportive. I just wanted to question one thing, which is the amendment starts with a G, and unless I'm missing something, I don't see an F in the report. So could somebody just check on that? Make sure we have the right lettering.
Good catch.
Meanwhile, I just want to say that from my perspective, Chinatown has always been the most remarkable area of Vancouver, and it's been something that certainly I know so many families have visited for years. So to maintain the buildings which provide the character of Chinatown, I think is extremely important, enabling the businesses there to continue. I'm really appreciative of everybody's work in this, and thank you, Councillor Kirby-Young, for putting the amendment forward.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Seeing no one else in the amendment queue, we'll put the amendment to a vote. Can we please go to the voting panel? Great, and the amendment passes unanimously with Councillor Dominato just away from the desk. Okay, so let's go back to the actual so, thank you. Okay, so now we're back to the main motion here, and we do have some people that want to, or councillors that want to speak. So Councillor Kirby-Young, you have the floor.
There we go. Yeah, no, I'll just say quickly, thank you to council for the support. And I think that this will be helpful to answer the questions from the community in terms of what now. And I think it's been such a valuable program. So I really appreciate the way that staff had set that up. It was a tangible, direct investment in the community that people could see the results of. And that had a lot of positive impacts. And so hopefully we can continue that work. But as I said, look towards the longer scale rehabilitation of these buildings, because that is really the opportunity, because it would be, I don't know what Chinatown would be if we didn't have the legacy buildings. And if those continue to decay, then we're starting to lose that physical history, which is so important. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So yeah, I'd like to support this amended report for many reasons. Heritage preservation in this historical district, Chinatown, plays a pivotal role in various aspects of community well-being, cultural identity, economic revitalization, and historical significance. It is an investment in the past, present, and it is an investment for the future in our city, ensuring the legacy of Chinatown for generations to come. Chinatown is not just a geographic location, but a cultural and historic anchor for Chinese Canadian history. Heritage buildings in the area serve as tangible links to the past, preserving the cultural identity and heritage of the community. These buildings offer a glimpse into history, tradition, and experience of generations who have contributed to our city. These buildings are a living testament of the history of Vancouver, reflecting the struggles, contributions, and achievements of Chinese immigrants and their descendants. Preserving them allows future generations to understand the challenges faced by the community, as well as their resilience and contributions to the city's growth. Heritage buildings are central to the economic vitality of the area. By supporting the preservation and the revitalization of these structures, the city can stimulate economic activity, attract tourism, and encourage the growth of heritage business and retail space, helping to sustain a vibrant and thriving Chinatown. Also, heritage buildings contribute to unique characteristics of Chinatown. This architectural style, distinctive features, and historical relevance create a distinctive atmospheres that sets Chinatown apart from other neighborhoods. Ongoing support ensure that this character is maintained and enhanced. Last, I think Chinatown's heritage buildings are important draw for tourists and residents. They provide an opportunity for people to engage with and learn about Chinese culture and history. This, in return, can promote cultural exchange, tourism, and a deeper appreciation of Vancouver's multicultural identity. So with that, I'm going to wholeheartedly support this amended report. Thanks, Councillor Kirby, for bringing that amendment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Joe. Councillor Carr.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Well, Councillor Joe did a great job of making the series of points that I would like to make, so I don't have to repeat them. I just say thank you for making those points. The only one that I would like to add to that is we are pursuing a UNESCO World Heritage Site for Chinatown, and I believe that the preservation of the restoration of these buildings is incredibly important. And so I thank all those owners, all those societies, the individuals that are pursuing the restoration and revitalization of those buildings, keeping the character that will be core to a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carr. Councillor Fry.
Thanks, Mayor, and really, I just appreciate this work and the ongoing work through the CHAMP process and all the work to identify and support Chinatown's legacy. Having lived in the neighborhood for so long, I'm always, one thing I miss is the wonderment and fascination of folks walking through the neighborhood and witnessing all this cultural heritage and significance. And years ago, when I had an office in Chinatown, I would have young, new immigrants from China coming to understand and just to appreciate the fact that the historical significance of Chinese people in this city and having built this city is reflected in that heritage and that history. And so it's an important piece to reflect on moving forward. And it's just such a crucial intervention. And so I'm glad to see this work ongoing at the city. I'm glad to see Councillor Kirby-Young's amendment to support future considerations along these lines. I think it's a step in the right direction, and excited to see what happens next. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Fry. So we will now put report number 1 to a vote. If we can all go to the voting panel, please. The suspense is killing me. I wonder how this one's going to turn out. Oh, wait. Councillor Fry. Oh, there we go. And report 1 passes as amended unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, the next report that was held was number 8. Piloting a pedestrian scramble crossing in Vancouver has been held to hear from registered speakers. Does any member wish to declare a conflict of interest on this item? Oh, great. Okay, so council, you have up to 5 minutes to ask questions of, hold on a sec. Yep, so council, you have up to 5 minutes to ask questions of team members. Are there any questions? And here we go. Oh, sorry, we have a presentation.
There is a presentation. Thank you, Mayor.
Great.
Morning, Mayor, councilors. I'm Winston. I'm the manager of the Traffic and Data Management Branch at the City of Vancouver. I'll have to ask, I think it's the clerk, Bonnie, if you can advance the slides for me. Just having some technical difficulties this morning with my laptop, so I don't have the WebEx. Thank you. Yeah, so thank you again for the opportunity to present to you the staff report on the pedestrian scramble pilot. Next slide, please. Earlier this year in April, Council passed a motion directing staff to report back on a potential pedestrian scramble pilot. Bonnie, if you could advance the next few points. There's a few. So the pilot would include a traditional scramble with an exclusive all walk and diagonal crossings what's also known as a six-way crossing, a location that has high pedestrian activities and volumes, and a pilot where we can learn from a Vancouver context how a pedestrian scramble may improve safety, walkability, and mobility in Vancouver. Next slide, please. So as part of the review, staff looked at a number of cities that currently have pedestrian scrambles, including Toronto, Calgary, Victoria, amongst other peer cities. And in addition to that, staff have reviewed the scramble in the past and investigated as part of projects including Hornby and Robson, where a scramble was considered and currently operates in all walk. So taking all that information together, we have a good understanding and knowledge of the current best practices of a pedestrian scramble, and including installation criteria, benefits and disadvantages of the pedestrian scramble, and of course, various ways of how a diagonal pedestrian scramble can be operated. As we'll talk about, there's generally two different ways that it can be operated. Next slide, please. So what is a scramble or six-way crossing? It provides an exclusive phase allowing pedestrians to cross both directly and diagonally across the intersection while all the vehicles are held at the intersection. So what we see here, as I mentioned earlier, there's generally two types and ways of operating the scramble. The first one here, type 1, is considered to be the safest way to operate a scramble because it separates the vehicle movements from the pedestrians. So the illustration above shows the sequencing of the lights of the intersection. So moving from phase 1 on the left, we see the vehicles getting the green light and they can proceed through east-west in the intersection, make turns, and we see there that as the pedestrians are held at the intersection, the turn movements can proceed without conflict. So moving to phase 2, similarly in the north-south direction, vehicles get the green light and pedestrians continue to be held. And finally, in the phase 3, that's when the pedestrian all-walk phase comes up and pedestrians can cross in all directions. And so, as I mentioned earlier, this one is generally considered the safest because it separates the movements. Of course, there's disadvantages to this in that if you see there the pedestrians being held to the one phase, it also reduces the opportunities for pedestrians to cross at the intersection. So this is really held for reserved for intersections where there's high turning movements, complicated intersections. This one that we're showing in the figure here is pretty simple with a four-way, but there are other ones. Shibuya in Japan is one location that I think quite a few of us may have seen or even experienced, where it operates as this type of scramble. So the other concern with this type of operation is if there aren't a lot of traffic volumes and turn movements, there can be violations where pedestrians just decide to cross the street against the don't walk. So next slide, please. So this is type 2 scramble, and in this case, it addresses the delay for pedestrians in that it allows the walk during the concurrent green phases. So in the phase 1 there, east-west green, again, the vehicles proceed similarly with the pedestrians. Right-turning movements and left-turning movements would yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk. Phase 2, similarly, north-south movements proceed. And so phase 1 and phase 2 is typically how we operate intersections in Vancouver. They cycle between those two phases, going back and forth. That way, the scramble, of course, adds in that third phase with the six-way crossing. And so this type of scramble is generally used in locations where turn movements are very low, or in locations where the turn movements are prohibited. Bonnie, if you can click the next, yeah. So in this case, we're prohibiting the turn movements, and you can see the vehicle movements are just going straight through the intersection. And so this type of scrambles is what we see in Toronto in the Yonge and Dundas operation, and other types of scrambles in North America have this type of scramble crossing. Next slide, please. So this shows a chart of the maximum delay for pedestrians with the different types of signal operations. So on the left, we see the typical intersection that cycled between phase 1 and phase 2 of the illustration in the previous slide. If a pedestrian arrives at the intersection just as the walk ends, they would typically wait just under 30 seconds until they get to walk again. With the type 1 scramble, because they're waiting till the last phase to cross, they're waiting, if they arrive right when the walk ends, they're waiting close to 60 seconds to get the walk again to do that diagonal 6-way crossing. And with type 2 pedestrian scramble, we see here that because their pedestrians can cross during the phase 1, phase 2, and 3, the delay decreases from the typical intersection to just over 20 seconds for a pedestrian to receive that walk, and they can get across the street. Next slide, please. So in looking at examples across North America and around the world, generally we're seeing these benefits and disadvantages. Primarily, the benefits include eliminating or minimizing conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles, increasing pedestrian priority and placemaking at intersections. We see that a lot in cities where improving priority and that placemaking piece is really important. And it actually translates to pedestrian safety and comfort. Decreasing crossing distances and time for pedestrians crossing diagonally at intersections, and then shortening pedestrian crossings where the geometry is complicated or skewed. So in locations that, like we see in the Shibuya or other locations where there's multiple legs intersecting into an intersection, it can allow pedestrians to cross without having to cross multiple sections of the intersection. Some of the disadvantages that we see, longer wait times for pedestrians. So that's the type 1 scenario. Increased transit and vehicle delays. With the scramble phase in the signal cycle, it's actually allocating less time during a certain period to vehicle movements in that north, south, east, west movement. So we will generally see increased delay in transit and vehicle movements at intersections. And then the challenges from what we've heard in our consultations with blind or low vision pedestrians, they have concerns with diagonal crossing, just not being clear on when it is to cross. But I'll talk a little bit about how we can mitigate some of the concerns that they've raised. Next slide, please. So installation criteria, as we look around other cities and their documentation of how they select these, generally they're looking at really high or consistently high pedestrian volumes through all times of the day and during the weekday and weekends, and generally higher pedestrian volumes, higher ratio of pedestrians versus traffic volumes. Where locations where pedestrian safety may be a concern with turning movements or other pedestrian safety comfort concerns. Desire for diagonal crossings is important. And as I mentioned earlier, just the placemaking and public realm opportunities for improvement. Next slide. So taking in that criteria, staff came up with the 9 locations. And we can see here, thanks, Bonnie, with those, the top locations with Georgia and Robson corridors as being the primary in terms of high priority with the amount of pedestrians, the activity that happens along these corridors at the intersections of Burrard and Thurlow. Commercial and First, certainly a busy commercial active area. Broadway and Commercial, major transit hub. Davie and Denman by the waterfront hub with lots of pedestrians and turning movements. And the 9th location, Seymour and Cordova, just outside the waterfront station with a lot of transit and pedestrians crossing there. So we took the list and we wanted to apply further criteria in terms of being able to install the scramble in a way that was timely, feasible, cost-effective, and we can coordinate with some other opportunities. So advance the next slide, please. Maybe again, it should. Yes, there we go. Thank you. So that narrowed us down to the 4 locations above: Granville, Georgia, Granville, Robson, Commercial, First, and Davie and Denman. And with those ones, we looked at it in a lot more detail. Staff went out to these intersections several times to collect traffic volume data, turn movements, pedestrian counts, transit movements. And we looked at the intersection configurations, and we did some preliminary consultations with TransLink on those locations. And we also modeled these intersections with software. Staff, we use a typical or standard, industry standard software modeling tool. It's called Synchro, SimTraffic, that allows us to take the information from an intersection and model that in a computer model, and then it allows us to look at the existing condition, and then if we apply changes to it, thank you, what those changes may look like and how that could impact the operations of the intersection. So generally what we see here is a summary of the report of the software modeling. So as I mentioned earlier, we can see the existing the scenario, and if we were to apply a scramble at the intersections. So just looking at the first one at the top, Granville and Robson, with the existing situation, as a vehicle approaches the intersection, they would experience about a 12.5-second delay before they would receive a green light. So that's overall at the intersection as vehicles, transit and motor vehicles approach the intersection. That translates to a level of service B, is what the software tool says to us. It's a relative grading of intersections, so A being the least amount of delay for transit and vehicles, and F being the worst case scenario, where the intersection may be failing. So failing would mean something in a situation where the demand at the intersection outweighs the capacity for the lights to be able to accommodate the queue of vehicles arriving during a given period of time. So traffic queues continue to build during that time. So looking at a level of service B is, we would consider during the peak periods is quite good in Vancouver. So as we apply the scramble, we see an increase of the delay to about 31 seconds, and that's 150% increase in the delay for transit and vehicles at the intersection. Granville and Robson, this section of Robson is quite low in volumes compared to the other locations. As we move to Georgia, that corridor does carry, during the peak periods, Georgia Street is about 4 times the volumes as Robson. And so we're seeing an increase there with the scramble from about 12.5 to 38 seconds. And that's about a 200% increase. And that brings us to a level service D. Commercial and First, it is a very busy east-west corridor. And that one we're seeing increasing from about half a minute to just under 5 minutes delay for vehicles. And that's a significant increase of level of service F. And I just want to quantify this just by saying that generally we won't see a level of service F. Motorists won't stay in a queue. They'll generally turn off at an adjacent or an intersection upstream. So in this case with Commercial and First, they would likely turn off at Knight Street or Nanaimo. Or the other thing maybe the things that we may see in the city is turning off on side streets. And that's certainly not something that we want to see. And of course, we look at ways to address that through traffic calming and prohibiting of movements and those kinds of things. So Davie and Denman, just the last one here, we're going from 15 to 44 seconds. Again, that's moving from a level of service B to D. Next slide, please. So taking that modeling and the information together, staff are proposing the scramble at Granville and Robson. with the high pedestrian volumes. There's low turning volumes at the intersection. In fact, generally turns are prohibited there already, with the exception of transit. There's 2 routes that make the westbound and northbound right turn. The intersection itself, the infrastructure there is also quite new. So there's actually 2 sets of pedestrian heads at each corner already, so we can repurpose one set for the diagonal crossing. There's the new controller cabinet that would accommodate this, existing pipes underground that we can use to install accessible pedestrian signals. So as I mentioned earlier, concerns that were raised by the blind and low vision community, we can install APS, accessible pedestrian signals, to provide for audible indications, vibro, tactile locator tones, and verbal messaging to let pedestrians know when the all walk or the scramble phase is on. And we'll continue to consult with the CNIB and other representatives of the blind and low vision community as we advance design for the scramble. I mentioned earlier transit concerns. We have had preliminary conversations with TransLink. They are concerned with the added delay. Granville Street in this section is a significant transit corridor. We see close to 1,200 transit vehicles per day on the corridor. And so this is something that we'll monitor with them and work with them on. The turn movements is something from the westbound Robson to northbound Granville is something that we'll monitor as well, with the turn movements and the potential conflicts with the pedestrians at that location. So next slide, please. Yes. So the intersection the staff are proposing it to operate as a type 2 scramble, with the pedestrians crossing during the concurrent green phases, as we see above, and then adding in the 6-way crossing as this 3rd phase. As I mentioned earlier, turn movements are already prohibited generally at the intersection, and we would be installing no right turn on red at the intersection as well. And I think that concludes the presentation.
Great. Thank
I'm
you
happy to.
very much, though.
Oh, sorry, Councilor. Mayor, just the last thing. So if council approves, staff will continue to consult with stakeholders, including the CNIB, council committees, and we'll also be in touch with the BIAs and Taxi Association. We'll advance the designs. There may be some additional accessibility features, including tactile warning strips on the sidewalk, which could provide additional guidance at the intersection. Developing a monitoring plan so we can see the before and after, not just from the vehicle and transit impacts, but also how pedestrian movements and safety improves and level of comfort. And then, of course, we're looking at implementing the pilot sometime mid next year. We'll be putting this in our construction scheduling. And then, of course, reporting back to council once we've had the opportunity to review the locations and have some good information that we can bring back to council. Thank you. And I believe this is the last slide. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Questions? Oh, look, we do. Okay. Councillor Meisner.
Yeah, thanks, Winston. Very
Yeah.
comprehensive presentation, and very excited to see this move forward. I know you talked about audible signals, tactile strips potentially. Are we planning zebra lines or painting of the intersection?
Yes. Yes. So we will be looking at diagonal markings into the intersection. The one that we're aiming towards right now is the one from similar to Victoria. So in the slides there, if we go to, I think, the second slide on the bottom, it's kind of small there, but it has the lines into the triangular into the intersection.
I don't know if we'll be able to pull it up, but I'm familiar with the
that's okay.
intersection. So, okay, that's good to hear. And then could you talk a little bit about why type 2 was chosen for this intersection? I understand it has to do with the fact that buses only go north to south and they
Yeah.
don't turn east or west.
That's one of the primary reasons, just the low turning volumes. And of course, Granville Street being a transit and authorized vehicle corridor, there's pretty low volumes there already and not a lot of turn movements at that location. And we really feel like delaying pedestrians to the third phase, we're going to see jaywalking there. So pedestrians will cross against the light. Right,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, there's already jaywalking there, so I would agree.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with the Granville Mall bylaw, pedestrians are permitted to cross mid-block.
Yeah.
So I believe it's 30 meters from the intersection they're permitted to do that. Yeah, depending on where you see it happen, it's okay.
Okay. And something I noticed is that, you're talking about going from 12 seconds to 31 seconds in terms of the delay, which to me is not huge. It still seems pretty low. And I'm just wondering if you can confirm an observation of mine. So when I've traveled, especially to the US, their delays for crossing signals tend to be quite long. I find like their green light signal or for vehicles can go on for a couple minutes. And you're standing there as a pedestrian. Is that in fact true that Vancouver's are shorter?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So just the way we operate intersections historically in the city, we've worked towards a philosophy of shorter cycle lengths, and it just keeps the intersection sort of snappier and moving quicker. Pedestrians get less of a delay. Even as we move to neighboring jurisdictions, you may see that there's longer cycle lengths, up to 85, 90 seconds. So as a pedestrian, you may be standing at a corner and waiting for that light to change. In addition, in Vancouver, we try as much as we can to have the walk come on during like automatically for all cycles. So in other cities, you may see a push button there and you have to press the push button to get the walk phase. And I should mention that with our scramble, we would be operating that automatically. So pedestrians wouldn't have to push a button to get the scramble. It would come on every cycle. So that is also a variation that we've seen in other cities where it'll operate as that typical intersection with the two phases, but only when you press the button for the scramble does it come up, right? But what we would be doing is operating at every cycle. So it's coming up and giving that pedestrian priority without them having to push a button and request for it.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
And then my last question was, is this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or will it not scramble, say, at 3 in the morning?
We plan to operate it 24/7.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Actually, one more question. Have you mentioned TransLink and the stakeholder engagement that will take place because of the transit route there?
That's
Has that begun already? Have you had any early conversations?
Yes. So actually, last week, coincidentally, there was a town hall with CNIB that I attended. So I brought this up with them. They provided me some initial comments. We've began the engagement, so we'll continue on with that. With TransLink, certainly, we'll be working with them, developing a monitoring plan, looking at transit impacts on the corridor. And of course, with Granville Street as well, there is some work already for the future of what the future of the corridor may look like. So with the implementation of the scramble here, we feel we can implement this fairly quickly. So it's an interim solution as the conversations are happening right now with Granville of what the future of it may be, and it just kind of helps us to build some momentum on that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Winston.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Great. Thank you very much. Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Winston, for the presentation. It's great, very good. So a couple of questions. I think you also highlight there's some challenge for the accessibility.
Right.
So what is our mitigation strategy for people on wheelchair who has some visual
Right.
challenges?
Yeah. So the wheelchair, the benefit of this intersection as well is that there's already sort of a drop down at every corner, and it's quite wide. Just in terms of how Granville Street, all along the corridor, it has these drop down curbs, so it doesn't have the vertical curb. So from an accessibility standpoint, that part is addressed, and there won't be a lot of concrete rework at that intersection. In fact, we don't anticipate any of that having to happen there. For the low vision and blind community, we're looking at the tactile warning strips on the sidewalk to let them know when and where the corner is, and then adding in the accessible pedestrian signal, which is essentially a push button device that has the audible tones to it. It'll have a locator tone so pedestrians will know where the crossing is, and then when the crossings actually occur. And with that one, we can program some verbal messaging as well to let them know when the diagonal crossing or the all walk occurs. Although there is going to be a push button device at the corner, pedestrians won't need to press the button to get the scramble or the walk phase, and we'll be adding some signage above the push button to let them know that the button push isn't required.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. The other question, so I think the model was done based on the traffic during rush hours.
Yes.
I wonder during non-rush hour, would the result be
Counselor
very
Joe,
different?
sorry, we're at time. Sorry.
Oh, I think the timer was not correct.
Sorry. I have 5 minutes to 18 seconds on this one.
It started like 3 minutes or something. I
Okay,
think.
so
Yeah.
we will give you another 3.
Very quick, yeah. Okay, yeah, so the question is, do I need to repeat the
Could you repeat? Yes.
Oh, yes, please. Yeah, okay. So I think the model was done based on the rush hours.
Right.
I wonder if during non-rush hours, the result will be very different or?
It will be, of course,
Okay.
depending on the time of day, and even a few hours off peak, volumes change significantly in Vancouver.
But
So
during non-rush hour compared to other options, still this one is the best?
for Robson and
Yeah, and
Granville
Granville,
specifically,
yeah.
yes, we
Okay.
believe that in looking at the other locations, and even the other top 9, those locations have higher volumes during the peaks. So without doing a detailed model in those locations, we feel that Robson and Granville is still a good location to try and test out, and then see, and then in the future, look at other locations potentially where we may expand.
Okay, and also, I guess, for the ongoing operations, the cost will be very minimal, right? As long as we set up at the beginning.
Yeah. So initially, through the community Growing Communities Fund, we had allocated $500,000. We don't believe that it'll be $500,000. We're looking
Yeah.
at maybe closer to $100,000 for the installation of this location. Yes.
Okay.
So with the remaining funding, we'll be reallocating that to other pedestrian safety improvements.
Perfect, thank you. One more last question. So I'm looking at Appendix E. So you have the cost breakdown for all those 4 options. I'm just curious why the other 2, commercial and first and Davy and Damon, are very expensive compared to the first 2 options. Why? Because of the construction?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just as we looked at those locations, there is a lot more concrete work that we'd have to
I
do.
see.
And generally, in most locations, even in downtown, a lot of our intersections are quite old. They're close to 50 years old, and we're going through a process right now to rehabilitate our plant and upgrade those. And with those, we can plan for future expansions, things like the scramble or other left turn phases and LPIs, those types of things.
Okay, one more last quick question. How long will be the pilot?
We don't anticipate having to terminate the pilot. So we're expecting to, with this location, with the numbers that we have today, we anticipate that we can implement this location and let it run indefinitely. Unless there's some, obviously with what's happening with Granville Mall in the future, that may change things so that then we may change the scramble, but we don't anticipate having to take the scramble out.
Perfect, thank you. That's all my questions. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Boyle.
Thank you. This was a delightfully detailed and nerdy presentation, and I really
I'm a traffic nerd.
really appreciate it. That's, I think, the job I want when I grow up now, too. I'm just wondering if you can give us a bit of a sense of how the cost of this project compares to the backlog of other pedestrian safety requests that we have,
Yeah.
flashing beacons or
Yeah.
leading pedestrian intervals
Yeah,
some other
that's a good question.
interventions?
So initially, we anticipated the higher cost. That would be close to in the range of a new pedestrian bike activated signal, right? We usually see that those new signals cost about $500,000. But with this location being $100,000, that's in a range of, I would say, the flashing beacon. So a rectangular flashing beacon, which we've seen some really good results as we install that throughout the city in specific locations, right? Like they work well where there's generally 2 lanes, like 1 lane in each direction, type streets where it's a shorter crossing. We're seeing significant increase in driver compliance and safety in those, upwards of 90%. So with that, like almost 20% reduction in cost, we're seeing almost the same level of safety improvement for pedestrians, right? And because it's a flashing light, it's actually a less of an impact on those corridors where there's transit or other, vehicle movements. As the pedestrian gets across the street, the vehicle can proceed through, right? Yeah.
Does there exist or could council see at some point a very detailed and nerdy chart comparing the cost of these different types of interventions and the impact that we've seen in terms of the metrics that we measure around
Yeah,
safety?
certainly. If this is an interest of council, we can bring back this information. Yeah, in the spring, typically we have the annual transportation report, and we can provide some more information on that.
I think that
Yeah.
would be really helpful and interesting in looking at where we allocate these dollars and what has the most
Yeah.
impact where. So
Yeah, yes, definitely.
I'd love to dive into that too.
Okay.
Thanks.
All
so
right.
much. That's all for me.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Fry?
I think Councillor Boyle kind of hit on some of where I was going, but I have to say, I did have a bit of a chuckle when you described 3 a.m. pedestrian scrambles at Granville and Robson. I thought, well, that's kind of the way it is at Granville and Robson right now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's true.
So kind of riffing off what some of Councillor Boyle was talking about, and I appreciate you brought up the Toronto model and the sort of, I think they call it the pedestrian priority phase, which is more of an LPI kind of an approach, a leading pedestrian interval, where it's not the diagonal as much. It's more about like giving those leading pedestrian intervals, and I'm like implementation and cost wise, because I know we installed one in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Rather instantaneously, and it had a huge effect right away. And I see that Sandy James, the transportation planner, has been blogging about this. Yeah, and dollar for dollar.
Yeah,
Do a lot of LPIs and improve that kind
we
of.
certainly can. In fact, most of the times with LPIs, we can install them. It's really staff time and programming, right? So with our traffic signal system, this is a nerdy thing, but we have a control room where we're able to manage and operate our intersections remotely. And so we can actually go through the calculations, do some of this kind of modeling, and then just upload the, through cyberspace into the intersection, and it starts to operate that way. There are certain times where then, we need to go out to the intersection and make some tweaks to it. And adjust some of the heads. But generally with the LPI, it's mostly staff time that we're talking about in terms of implementation. And then we might go out there and actually check to make sure it's working with the crew. So it's significantly less in terms of cost to implement the LPI. And we're continuing to do that. As we look at intersections and we're updating our signal timing plans, we're looking at them for LPIs. We do, I think this year already, we've done about 15 of those. In total, I think in Vancouver, there's about 50 right now, but every time we look at an adjustment to a signal timing at an intersection, we're looking at it for an LPI.
Do we have the flexibility within our LPI programming to give it like certain times a day, not all the times a day, like eliminated?
That's a possibility too. Okay. Yeah, I think that there's pros and cons to doing that, because just like the scramble where we want to operate all times of the day, we want to have road users get used to how it's going to operate, right? So that no matter what time of the day you come to the intersection, you're going to experience the same, thing. And that sort of builds in that sort of driver road user behavior. Yeah.
So, and just for the benefit of those of us, I appreciate the nerd detail,
Yeah.
but for the benefit of everybody else, LPIs, it gives pedestrians more of a chance to cross before the cars even start. If
Yes.
Maybe just like in the simplest form.
Yes, yeah. So giving the pedestrians that head start, they're in the field of view, right? And they then recognize that the pedestrians, even they're already advanced in, they have the right of way, and so we're seeing some good results from that, and not just within Vancouver, but across, other cities.
Demonstrable pedestrian safety results from LPIs.
Yeah,
All right. Thanks, Winston. Appreciate it.
yeah. You're welcome.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Councillor Fry just introduced the subject that exactly I wanted to follow up on, which is pedestrian safety. So we have a lot on the time that it takes to cross, et cetera, and convenience. I am interested in pedestrian safety, and so what is the data showing for places that have pedestrian scrambles? Are we seeing, marked decrease? Because all of us have experienced corners where pedestrians are running again, like just in the last quarter second before traffic starts.
Yeah.
What
It ranges from what we've seen and researching other cities, North America, around the world. I've seen reports that say 10% up to 50% increase or reduction in pedestrian collisions. And so it depends on how the intersection operates. Again, as I mentioned, there's various ways to operate the scramble phase, whether it's the type 1 or type 2 or required for pedestrians to push the button. But we are seeing, the reports indicate that there is marked improvements. And I think it's giving that sense of place, that pedestrian priority. It just kind of highlights it for the motorists. The added markings through the intersection as well. I think that highlights to road users and motorists that, priority is pedestrians here.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Love to see a continuing report back on how it works from a pedestrian safety point of view,
Okay.
or non-vehicular. Second question, buses on Granville.
Right.
You indicated that potentially on Granville, there's not going to be much of an impact. I just need some specific information. Have you looked at the bus routes? Is that going to not affect the sort of timing of buses through this intersection?
Yeah, so with the modeling that we saw with the increased delay for vehicles, of course, on Granville, that's primarily going to be transit vehicles being delayed. And of course, taxis use the corridor as well. Now, again, that is a model, as a software model. Not every bus is going to experience that delay, right? It just depends on when they approach the intersection, and so we're with TransLink, they have some detailed information on their vehicles where we can get actual real-time numbers. So we'll be working with them as they capture the information, that the data that they have now on the vehicles going through the corridor, and then once the scramble's in place, then we can see, how long the vehicles take to transit through the route, and then from that we can make some, additional adjustments. We'll certainly be looking at ways to, tweak the intersection, whether we adjust, fine-tune some of the timing of the east-west or north-south movements to be able to, address some of the concerns if we see any.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, it'd be good to keep for us to know how the monitoring's going on that, and I'm sure you will in the report back.
Yeah, we'll certainly be doing
Third and final
that.
question. Davy and Denman was the kind of second best choice, I guess, in terms of time delay. And I also noted that there was a greater cost to that intersection compared to the Robson and Granville. If we know that there is going to be potentially some change in traffic around that intersection. Is that an opportune time to think about investing in something like the?
Yeah, absolutely.
I go through that intersection all the time. I mean, there's a huge number of people that cross there.
So with the West End waterfront plan work that's happening now, or will be advancing, we'll certainly be looking at that intersection. It is a really interesting one for a scramble type operation with the turning movements, the transit movements through there, and the high amount of pedestrians at that location, right? So as we look forward in the planning, I think that's a location that we'll certainly be considering.
Sorry, and we're at
I think I
Yeah.
started at 41 seconds.
40, yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
thanks, sorry.
If we were to advance it today, there is a significant cost because that intersection is one in downtown that's quite old, that we would have to do a lot of rework around. And the sidewalks there are also quite narrow. So that, depending on how we operate the scramble there, it could be a constraint for pedestrians.
Anyway, look forward to getting that
Yeah.
as we go through, and that you're going to incorporate that in thinking.
Yes,
through that.
absolutely.
Lots of nods, that's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you very much, and sorry about that. We have some gremlins in the system here. So some clocks were reset, some weren't, and I apologize for that. All right, so seeing no other counselors in the queue, we're now going to move to hear from members of the public. Before we begin, I would like to remind council and members of the public that in accordance with the updates to the procedure bylaw that were enacted at the May 10th council meeting, public speakers may only speak for up to 3 minutes, and council may not ask questions of speakers. Public speakers should state whether they are in support or in opposition of the recommendations and may only speak once. I will also ask speakers if they are residents of Vancouver if it is not noted on the speakers list. And so our first public speaker is Nathan Davidovitz. Nathan.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and special thanks to Councillor Meisner for bringing this proposal. As I spoke before, we have to blame Vision Vancouver for most of our transportation problems. They canceled the Transportation Committee of Council and appointed senior staff who do not want to prioritize transportation. I'm not sure why there are no other speakers on this item. I thought Vision Zero Vancouver should be here, not just on Denman Street during the car-free day. So where are they? You know, former planner, as you mentioned, Sandy James, yeah, she wrote a very good article about this in her blog. But we need discussion, proper discussion, not at the council, but around a table at committee room number 1, not here. I attended, we need way more initiatives like these in many areas of the cities. Pedestrian deaths and injuries are actually increasing, not just here, but all over North America. I attended the 25th anniversary symposium last Wednesday at the Children's Hospital. That was the BC Injury Research and Prevention Unit. No one from the city was there. The transportation planner from Surrey spoke. According to ICBC statistics, the top number 1 intersection is still where the first traffic signal was installed in Vancouver in 1928. Do you know where that is? Main and Hastings. So we have these problems, you know, where you have $500,000 in your budget. Why not add Main and Hastings to Robson and Granville as potential second location, or do some other things? Because the downtown east side has too many crashes, just too many, and has to be dealt with in some way. Bus priorities should be installed. We are way behind major other cities. Toronto has 400 traffic signal priority for transit. We have 0. And it's just a matter of, as I said, the council has to decide how pedestrian safety is being handled, and unless we have a proper committees to discuss that, it's not going to happen. ICBC is, I don't know, what they're doing. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Meisner, again.
Thank you very much. All right. Seeing no one, seeing that there's no one else on the registered speakers list, this, right. Awesome. Great. So would someone like to move a motion? Oh, Councillor Meisner. Oh, hold on a sec.
So we moved the recommendations already, right? Okay, move the recommendations, please.
Okay, great. Moved by Councillor Meisner, seconded by Councillor Carr. Council, is there any discussion? And Councillor Meisner, you're on the queue.
Good, perfect. Okay, so great discussion today, and I really appreciate that really detailed presentation from staff, and was also nerding out to Councillor Boyle's point, because I love this sort of stuff. But I did circulate an amendment, which I would like to put forward, so if we could just move to the amendment queue, please. Okay, so
Or just, so it was moved, seconded by Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
yeah, so thanks very much. I think we've heard really compelling evidence today as to the case to move this forward, given the fact that we can do this at a substantially reduced cost at this intersection, given the infrastructure that's in place. And I also think it's a great location for it in terms of placemaking, in terms of our pedestrian-friendly downtown, and in terms of the Granville Street revitalization and the planning process, which is currently underway. So I'm really excited to see this move forward, and I think that I think it's the right location for a pilot. Certainly, it's not a super busy intersection, but it is definitely a very busy intersection in terms of pedestrians and pedestrian volume. So the amendment is really to just put some more specific timelines around this. I'd like to see us get that report back by end of Q1 2025, and that's going to allow us to see how the scramble was used during the summer of next year, and also the fall, because those are two really different times downtown. Summer obviously being really busy with lots of tourists, and the fall being, well, like the last few days, rainy and less busy. So I think that'll give us a good perspective as to how the scramble's working and any learnings that that we may need to incorporate. So that is the spirit of the amendment, and hoping for council's support on it.
Great. Thank you very much. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, supportive of this work, appreciate the conversation, and supportive of this amendment. I have supplied an amendment to the amendment, and I circulated a slightly amended amendment to that amendment just a little while ago at, so it actually, the amended amendment to the amendment is just and instead of and or.
Great. So we are in amendment Q2. Councillor, so seconded by Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillor Meisner.
Yeah, so I just want to speak in support of Councillor Fry's amendment to my amendment. I also agree that these priority phasing signals for pedestrians that allow pedestrians to cross first before the vehicle traffic moves are very helpful. I've had one recently implemented in my neighborhood at an intersection that I personally witnessed an accident at. So I feel much safer crossing at that intersection, knowing that I'm in this crosswalk by the time the vehicles start to move. And from what I've noticed, it's really reduced the conflicts between turning vehicles and people crossing in the crosswalk. So really supportive of this, and thanks Councillor Fry for bringing it forward. And also really encouraged to hear that this is more of a staff time constraint, or like a technical constraint, as opposed to a money constraint. So would love to see these pedestrian priority phasing, honestly, like all over the city. It seems like a no-brainer to me. Don't know maybe there's some downsides to that, but I think this is a great addition. So thanks again, Councillor Fry, for putting this forward.
Great. Thank you very much. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Chair. I'll take the opportunity to speak to both the amendment and the additional amendment at this time, just in the interest of time. That was a bit repetitive, wasn't it? I do want to just appreciate and thank Councillor Meisner for bringing forward the amendment, as well as Councillor Fry. I think on two fronts. The pedestrian scramble, I think, is innovative. We've seen it work in other jurisdictions. It's something I had felt strongly about having in our platform. So I'm really excited to see that we'll have that opportunity to see that piloted in the city of Vancouver. And then to the second portion of the amendment around leading time for pedestrians. This is really important in light of our city. We're encouraging densification. We're encouraging people to live without vehicles, to either walk, cycle, roll. And it is one of the top issues I hear about from the residents is around pedestrian safety in the city, particularly as we get into the fall and the winter months. It's darker, it's harder to see, visibility isn't great. And so whatever we can do to make it safer for people to move about in the city, I think is a win. So really supportive of both the overall report and the two subsequent amendments. So thank you to both of my colleagues.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thanks. I'll also comment on both the amendment to the amendment, and the report as a whole. So we don't have to extend that the timeline there. And just to say, I'm super excited to be out seeing us proceed down this path. I think it is a very, very good move for a city that is aiming to really increase pedestrian, pedestrian and walking infrastructure. It is part of our greener city and part of our climate emergency action plan priorities, and it is part of the transportation priorities, and zero fatalities is part of that too. So I think that there is safety that is involved in this. There is convenience that reduces risk. I've seen way too many pedestrians running against a red light even to get through an intersection and near misses. So I'm super happy to see this, and anyway, say congrats to staff for the work that you're doing on this and the work that you will be doing going forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks. I'll be brief, and I was going to wait until we finish the amendment to speak, but I'll jump on the train and do it at this part of the proceeding. Yeah, I just want to say that it's really, it's a great thing to be able to start putting much more focus on pedestrians in the city. I don't think we've done enough of that in the last number of years, despite the fact that pedestrians are the top hierarchy of our active transportation pyramid and structure. And so I think that this really dovetails nicely with some of the work that we're doing about looking at pedestrianizing Gastown, and with a pilot coming in summer 2024, with the bolder vision that we put forth for a much more robust public space design on Granville Street. And I think that, while that planning work is underway, this will provide an opportunity to start enabling that sort of pedestrian friendly feeling for the street. And it's both a safety piece. We have an aging population as well, right? Sometimes it takes people, as they get a little bit older, a bit more time to cross. But I also think it's a quality of life for people to be able to go about and enjoy the city without having the same safety concerns. And these type of traffic strategies and designs are things that we see all over the world. And I actually would love to see Vancouver doing more of this and leading in this area. So I'm super happy to see that we're not just looking at doing one, but council is sort of setting its intention here and conveying to staff that we're really looking to do more of this work to prioritize pedestrians, more scrambles, more leading signals, and just in general, more pedestrian friendly environment with our street design, the wider setbacks and sidewalks that we're requiring through development. And as we see our neighborhoods redevelop, is really putting that priority and that focus. So very happy to support. Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, seeing no one else in the queue, we are going to put the amendment to the amendment as proposed by Councillor Fry to a vote. Great, and so the amendment to the amendment passes unanimously. Great, so we'll go to the amendment queue. Councillor Fry, you're on the queue.
Oh, I'm good. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, good. Seeing no one else in the queue, we will now vote on the amendment proposed by Councillor Meisner as amended by Councillor Fry. And the amendment, as amended, passes unanimously as well. Great, so we'll go back to the main queue. Councillor Meisner.
Yeah, no, just want to say thank you so much for council's support and staff's work on this project. I think it's really exciting that we're moving this forward, and as mentioned by my colleagues, prioritizing pedestrians, which are probably the dominant, must be the dominant group of people getting around downtown. So really excited to see this move forward and have future safety initiatives prioritizing pedestrians across the city. So thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, seeing no one else in the queue, we will put the motion as amended and amended to a vote. Great, and the motion as amended twice passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, the next item on the docket is referral reports. We'll now consider the referral reports held for questions to team members. So the first and only one is referral report number 6, and the title of that is Rezoning 6065 to 6075 Callingwood Place. Before we get started, does any team member wish to, does any councillor wish to declare a conflict of interest on this item? All right, seeing none, Councillor Kirby-Young, you held this referral report. You have 5 minutes to ask questions of team members.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Council may recall that we recently had another referral also on Callingwood Place, and I asked a question at that time, and now we have the second report. And sort of staying within the lines that council can ask procedural questions at this point, and so not the merits of the application, but I did ask at that time that this is coming forward under the SRP, but with respects to life safety issues. And I wonder if procedurally you can advise and I'll just frame the question. There were concerns raised in the report, given this is a cul-de-sac, and there was a fire on the street that significantly impacted a home, and with respects to egress in and out of Callingwood Place, that the referral report indicates there's a number of safety concerns here, and subsequently council did receive a communication prior to this referral now from the proponent that suggests that the vehicular access will not be off Collingwood and that it will be off 44th, but I'm not sure that that is specifically detailed in the public hearing documentation. So I wonder if you can advise, and that city staff, as it was conveyed in the letter, were supportive of that. I wonder if you can advise procedurally how that would happen to address what we're hearing for concerns moving forward.
Doug Smith, Acting General Manager for Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability. Just give me a second to confer with staff and I'll get right back to you.
Thanks.
I'm going to ask Paul Storr from Engineering to come up and address that.
Okay. I do have a time limit.
Paul Storr, Director of Transportation. We can answer more fully at the public hearing. It is later in the process that we normally approve specific access locations, but overall we try to get access off of the kind of quietest streets. So if there's a lane, we try to get access off a lane. If there's a minor street, we try to get access off the minor street if there's no lane, and that improves safety overall. In the case of this, development, there are multiple options, and we can provide more info on that at the public hearing.
At the public hearing, so that can be a point of discussion at public hearing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Leave it there. Happy to move the referral. Thanks.
There's another. Councillor Boyle?
Thanks. In the same vein, I just wanted to ask, I had a number of questions about lack of sidewalks and And that piece of the access pedestrian safety, that's a public hearing question as well.
Correct.
I'll see you then. Okay.
Great. So moved by Councillor Kirby-Young, seconded by, great. Council, is there any discussion? Seeing none in the queue, why don't we put it to a vote? Great, and the referral report passes unanimously. Great, thank you very much. Okay, moving on, administrative motions. There is one administrative motion on the agenda today. Consequential amendments to adding missing middle housing and simplifying regulations. Update to various land use documents to simplify and update policies and guidelines. Does any member wish to declare a conflict of interest on this motion? Council, are there any questions to the team members? Okay, so would someone like to move a motion? Great, Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Joe. Council, is there any discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor say yay. Yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Okay, notice of council members' motions. Are there notices of council member motions for upcoming standing committee meetings? I would like to remind council that due to the amendment to the procedure bylaws, members' motions will be placed on standing committee agendas. Reminder to please state the title of the motion and the date of the standing committee meeting on which you intend to move the motion, and be sure to send the title and date to the standing committee meeting by email to the city clerk. Great. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, motion for November 1st Standing Committee titled Advancing Britannia Renewal.
Thank you very much. Councillor Boyle.
Thanks. Sorry, I just want to make sure I get the title of my own motion right. I'll hop back on after you, Mayor.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm next. Do I need to see the chair on this one? No? Okay. Yeah. No. Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so I'd like to provide notice of motion for the standing committee meeting on November the 1st for a motion titled Delivering a New Supply of Middle Income Housing in Vancouver. Councillor Boyle.
Great, thanks. I have a motion for November 1st entitled Creating Safer Streets for People of All Ages with Intersection Safety Cameras.
Great. Thank you very much. Does anybody have anything else? For sure. All right. Great. New business. Councillor Dominat. Oh, you're getting in the queue for the next one. Okay, thank you. We have one item of new business on the agenda today. Requests for leaves of absence as follows. For myself, for personal reasons, from meetings on October the 17th, 2023, from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. and October the 18th, 2023, from 12:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. For myself, for civic business, from meetings on October the 19th through the 30th. 2023. For myself, for civic business, from meetings on November the 30th, 2023, from 3 p.m. onwards. For Councillor Klassen, for civic business, from meetings on November the 14th, 2023, from 5 p.m. onwards. For Councillor Meisner, for personal reasons, from meetings on November the 7th, 2023, from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m., November the 14th and 15th all day, and November the 16th, 2023, from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. Okay, would someone like to move the motion? Councillor Bly, Councillor Dominato seconded. Council, is there any discussion? And sorry, I see people in the queue here. Is that for this? Okay, great. So is there any discussion on this? No? Great. All those in favor say yay. Yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. The motion carries unanimously. And let me just get that up here. So. Okay. Council, are there any other items of new business? And it looks like there is. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Mayor. I just have 3 LOAs to move in my name. October 31st from 2 p.m. onwards for personal business, November 14th, 5 p.m. onwards for civic business, and November 21st, 22nd, 23rd for civic business.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bly.
Thank you. I have a LOA for civic business on November 14th from 5 p.m. onwards.
Great. Thank you very much. So I think I should see the chair. I have something under new business. Oh, do I? Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yes, can we vote on the leave of absence? So do we have to have a seconder? Yep. Seconded by Councillor Joe. All in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Great. So that passes. We're all good? Okay. Okay, won't we, here, and I'll get back in. Councillor Kirby-Young?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I have a leave of absence request very quickly, also for all day, October 31st, November 1st, November 2nd, November 7th for personal reasons, and then civic business all day, November 16th.
Thank you. And do we need a seconder for that? Yeah, Councillor Joe, thank you. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Can I please see the chair? Councillor Dominato. Okay, I'd like to see the chair so I can introduce a piece of new urgent new business. So I'd like to move my motion, accelerating housing delivery through transformative change as a piece of urgent business.
May proceed.
Okay. Okay. Well, sir.
Second, Councillor Bly. You can proceed.
I'll notice.
Clerks?
May I just add in, under the procedure bylaw, the chair must rule whether or not the matter is urgent first before proceeding.
I'll move a 5-minute recess to confer with staff. Council, I'm going to call our meeting back to order. We almost have everyone. Thank you, Council, for the 5 minutes. I have consulted with staff, and I understand that Mayor Sim is seeking to introduce this motion under urgent business. I am going to rule that the motion does constitute urgent business under Section 9.6 of the procedure bylaw, and I will allow the motion to proceed. And just to reinforce that is that under urgent business, it reflects a connection to public health and safety. And I think that, as we know, we have a housing crisis in the city. We have people sleeping homeless on our streets. We have an urgency around housing, and so it's under that ruling that I will allow it to proceed. I'll also note that there was a minor technicality of the motion being removed from the agenda, and the mayor did circulate that motion to all of council and did make it public in advance of this week's meeting.
Great, thank you very much. I'll keep this brief. I gave notice of this motion in our last council meeting 2 weeks ago, which was recorded in the minutes, but unfortunately, due to a procedural technicality, it was removed from tomorrow's agenda. And I spoke at length about my motion last week, but let's be clear here. There's no time to waste in addressing the housing crisis that we are facing. And I truly believe that the housing crisis facing the residents of Vancouver meets the definition of urgent. If council is in favor of moving forward on these policies, then we have the opportunity to begin work today to accelerate housing delivery across the city. And we are answering the call, not for short-term gain, but for long-term results. And this motion puts forward 7 bold policy ideas that will build more homes faster and substantially change the way that we deliver housing in the city. I do want to stress one thing. We talk about being very serious about building housing, and we talk about how people struggle. And what we should be doing is we should be doing everything we can to accelerate the building as many homes as possible. 2 or 3 or 4 weeks may not seem like a lot to people, but I can tell you, people that are looking for housing, that means everything. And so if we can speed this up, I think it would be great.
Thank you, Mayor. That's your 2 minutes. I need a seconder. Seconded, Councillor Bly. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Councillor Klassen, you're on the queue.
Thanks very much. Are we able to bring up the motion on the screen?
Oops. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I just want to speak in support of this motion. I think it's important. I think it's a pivotal time for us right now to really show that we're incredibly serious about the need to develop more housing faster in our city. The fact, I don't really need to speak to the procedural part of it. I think that the arguments are clear. This is an urgent matter to anybody you would sort of speak to in this city right now. The idea that we have to get moving with our processes, revisit old ways of doing things, and bringing forward new ideas for trying to expedite the delivery of housing in the city of Vancouver is arguably one of the most urgent concerns of our time right now. So I would very much like to see us move forward with this. I'm looking forward to the debate and discussion from my fellow councillors, but we really do have, I think, ahead of us a large challenge, and that every week that we postpone this is another potentially larger period of time that it will take for us to actually deliver on these goals. So I'm very supportive of moving forward, and thank Mayor Sim for bringing forward this motion with 7 items. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Klassen. Councillor Zhou.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so I also want to speak to support this motion. I think This urgent motion presented by the mayor underscores the severity of the housing crisis in Vancouver. It also highlights the urgency of the solutions needed. This motion offers a bold and a comprehensive approach to address housing crisis. The urgency of this situation cannot be overstated, with residents struggling to find affordable housing, leaving the city due to the high cost, and facing long wait time for the rental opportunities. Because of the crisis, we need transformative change, and the mayor's motion is a call to action. It's a solid response to the housing crisis in Vancouver. It advocates for change to expedite housing development, reducing the complexity, and making housing more accessible for residents. This bold idea seeks to transform housing landscape and ensure city remains vibrant and diverse. I'm also happy to see the support in response to the new short-term rental legislation from the province yesterday. We need to utilize everything we have in our municipal toolbox to solve this housing crisis. As I mentioned multiple times, every single unit matters. Every single unit counts. So this motion does exactly that. So with that, I'm 100% support the motion tabled by the mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Zhou. Councillor Kirby-Young.
There we go. Yeah, thanks. I want to speak strongly in support of this motion, and it was circulated, as was mentioned, and it's been widely publicly communicated in terms of the steps. And I think that Mayor Sim was brief in his remarks, but I want to highlight some of what I think is significant here. And the motion itself starts with a preamble that it was a quote from Mayor Sim at the Board of Trade. I hear of stories of people firsthand, stories of people leaving the city, how they can't afford rent, or how they're in line with 75 other people just trying to rent a basement. That is a crisis, and it is. If you look at the recent short-term regulations that were announced by the province, we don't even qualify to exercise discretion there because we are considered to be a market with one of the crisis-level vacancy rates. You have to have a vacancy rate above 3% before you could even have flexibility in terms of the provincial guidelines. And I think that that is incredibly significant in our city. And despite the record amount of rental approvals that council has achieved in the last few years, it's clear that we need to do more because we have more people coming into our city. And so we need to accelerate the efforts. A couple of things that I want to note that are significant to me as I'm looking at this motion is accelerating the 26 village areas that are outlined in the Vancouver plan. Yes, they are outlined in the Vancouver plan, but what is distinctive and noteworthy here is reporting back on opportunities for pre-zoning the village areas. That is the game changer, is the ability to actually eliminate having to go through a public hearing process and shortening that timeline so that somebody's not spending several years in both an application, feedback from staff, a revision, a public hearing, a DP, and so on and so forth. We look at what we have seen with the SRP and the secured rental policy, how quickly those projects are able to move forward. The pre-zoning that was put in place for the Canby corridor with respects to townhouses, when initially those were new, people were a bit nervous about them, and now they go through seamlessly. And that's a housing form that is incredibly valued in the city. And I think that the village areas is another one where we can really see some great opportunity that keeps the character of those areas, but puts the density in. And we have spent so much time talking about complete livable communities, and that means having people and services together. And so I love that we're building on the villages, but the pre-zoning piece really stands out for me. The other thing I think is really important is that Vancouver has long prided itself on having its own building bylaw. Yes, that has allowed the city to show leadership in sustainability and accessible building practices. We're looking to maintain those really important principles, but we also know that some of the differences between Vancouver having its own building bylaw and the province having its separate one means that it is simply more expensive and more cumbersome to move development forward in the city of Vancouver. And so I think it's incumbent on council to get that information and understand what those differences and those additional costs are. It sort of makes me pause in my tracks when I hear developers who, and we need them to deliver the housing, say, and proponents, or even if it's, whether it's nonprofit or if it's for market rental, is that they actually say, you know what, I have trades and they have to do it one way in Burnaby and one way in Richmond, and then they cross over this line and they have to do it differently in Vancouver. And it's complicated and it's complex. And that what we need is simple, quicker, and easier. The other last thing that I'll say too is what I like in this motion is, or two quick points, is E. which is around the floor plates and allowing the maximum allowable floor plate. Again, Vancouver has smaller floor plates. This was similar to the conversation we had about childcare and our guidelines. Apparently, kids growing up in Burnaby somehow had an inferior experience, or were less safe in a childcare than they were in Vancouver. That didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It's pretty similar with floor plates here. Or you think of what in Vancouver when we had to change the occupancy codes for bars because you could run the same bar in Burnaby and have more people than you could have if you went 50 feet over in Vancouver. We changed that. I think that's a similar conversation with floor plates because you can actually get more homes if you do that. It can also be environmentally much more efficient. And so that supports our sustainability goals too. And finally, if I look at Clause F in this one, we know that some of the impediments to building around the SkyTrain stations, like Nanaimo, 29th, et cetera, are the infrastructure and the sewer piece. I don't know that we fully quantified that amount and figured out how do we actually get past that impasse and actually moving forward and building it. And so we really have to have that conversation more robustly and tackle it. And I think that's what the mayor is asking to do here, and I'm happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillor Meisner.
Yeah, thanks very much. Also wanted to speak in support of the mayor's urgent motion. Again, I mean, I don't think we need to further underscore the urgency of the housing crisis in Vancouver. And this suite of measures to accelerate the delivery of housing of all types across the city is critically important. And as mentioned, it was socialized at a press conference last week and extensively covered by the media. But just wanted to highlight a few of the challenges we're facing and also why this is so urgent. Everyone is aware of the long timelines for getting projects started, and that's something that we're actively working on as council to get those timelines down. And this is part of that. But the challenges include difficulty getting financing due to high interest rates, high costs, and labor shortages affecting the industry. So really every day counts when it comes to getting shovels in the ground and getting housing built. And there are some extremely important aspects to this motion, one of which was just highlighted by Councillor Kirby-Young, but I just wanted to underscore that, and that is the implementation of the village nodes in the Vancouver plan. So that's going to, if approved, allow for higher density buildings in the village nodes across the city. When I first came here to council a year ago, I remember asking questions like, where is the Vancouver plan? When is the Vancouver plan coming? And heard, well, it's not coming till 2026. So this is going to accelerate that aspect of the Vancouver plan, and it's urgently needed. So very, very supportive of that, as well as the desire to look at some of our underdeveloped SkyTrain stations. As mentioned, and also in the motion, we have SkyTrain stations on the Expo line that have been there since the late 80s and are surrounded by single-family homes. So this is really signaling that we are ready to move forward with adding new density, in particular rental, around those SkyTrain stations and building homes for Vancouverites as soon as possible. So very, very happy to support this motion and the spirit of urgency about housing in Vancouver. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meisner. Councillor Boyle.
Thanks, Chair. I have circulated an amendment to the motion. I'm hoping we can move to an amendment queue.
Yes, go ahead. Clerks, can you move us to an amendment queue?
Okay. It probably needs a second or two. So my amendment, in the spirit of urgency, is directing staff to speed up work on a motion council passed last December titled Reducing Barriers and Deepening Affordability for Nonprofit Co-op and Social Housing in Every Neighborhood. Council may remember that that motion was amended and then passed unanimously, and we, council got an update this week that the work isn't to be initiated until 2024 with a target report back in 2025. The conversation the housing crisis was clear last December. The need for urgent action was clear last December. I appreciated the unanimous support, but the amendment to this motion slowed down response on it. And I was very frustrated to see that we won't actually get a report back until 2025 on this. I don't think that's in line with the words that I heard, the rhetoric that I heard about the urgency of the housing crisis, particularly for our most affordable forms of housing. And so I'm hoping that again, in this spirit of emergency urgent action, that council will support speeding this work up.
Thanks, Councillor Boyle. I see a number of councillors on the queue. I'll move to Councillor Carr.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Councillor Boyle, for putting forward this amendment. One of my problems with the current motion is that it doesn't speak to the issue of affordability. So I think that it is an affordable housing crisis that we particularly have in Vancouver. So this amendment does speak to the issue of affordability and making sure we move forward the most affordable housing, deepening that affordability for nonprofit co-op and social housing in every neighborhood is exactly what people are asking for, because most people are saying there's housing out there, I just can't afford it. So thank you, Councillor Boyle again for putting this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Sorry, I wonder if I can ask a point of information, Chair, through you to staff? Just nod, yes. I'm just going to ask a point of information through you, if I can, to staff. Oh, sorry. Lisa? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Thanks. I don't have the memo in front of me, but I know that council's already passed this motion, so that direction's already been given. I wonder if staff could just recap the reason for the timeline in the update memo that council received that Councillor Boyle referred to.
Yeah, Doug Smith, Acting General Manager, Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability. So we're beginning to work on that motion right now, and the intent is to report back early in 2025.
Okay, my question is why the timeline? Why a year from now?
It was just prioritizing it with all the other priorities or all the other projects we're working on.
Okay, and if we, if this passes, I mean, this has already passed the motion, but if this is sped up, would that impact some of the work that we're talking about here in terms of unlocking a lot of the other opportunities to drive housing forward?
This complete motion,
For example, the
including this potential.
missing middle that passed recently, like.
Yeah, correct. So essentially, this overall motion, as well as this additional piece that may or may not get included, we'll have to look at our overall work plan and just reshuffle and figure out how we prioritize council's direction.
Okay, so for example, something like the significant change, I think it was described as one of the most historic by staff at that time, changes for residential zones to collapse the 11 down to 1 and sort of essentially not eliminate single family zoning, but allow multiplex everywhere, that could be delayed?
No, it would not delay multiplex.
So this would come after?
We'd be working on it concurrently, but there'd be other projects that we haven't necessarily started or aren't rushing to the finish line at this point that we would have to figure out how we shuffle.
Do you know what those are yet? So council could make an informed consideration?
Not at the top of my head, no, sorry.
We don't know now. Okay, so we might have implications we're not aware of. Okay, thanks.
We can bring back that information to council through a briefing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kirby-Young. I'm just going to put myself on the queue for a minute to pose a question back to staff. If you could clarify for me, is what I just heard is that you'll be carrying on this work concurrently. So either through you, City Manager, or to Doug. Can you just clarify, because this often comes up in council as we have conversations about workload and priorities and how we're advancing. You've got the Vancouver plan, we have the missing middle framework. We have the Broadway plan, we have this motion, we have other efforts underway. Will most of this be carried out concurrently? Is that what I heard?
So a lot of this work is carried out by different teams and carried out in parallel or concurrently, but there's only so much work. So the team is essentially fully built out for the next year. Every time something new comes on, we have to make adjustments. And it doesn't necessarily mean that something gets pushed off or falls off the table. Sometimes there's a little bit of flexibility, but sometimes we do have to make decisions about what projects maybe we're planning to start in 2024, and we decide these are other priorities council has put in front of us. We're now going to move that project 6 months farther down the line. But as I mentioned, once we get the clear direction here, we can bring this back to council through a briefing and sort of lay out the work plan as we hear it from council and go from there.
Okay, thank you. I see other councillors on the queue, so I'll move to Councillor Zhou.
Yeah. Thanks, Mayor. Just a question to staff as well. So because we have 7 or 6 different recommendations in this motion, and do we have enough resource if we want to speed up this work? What will be the impact for the department?
We would have to take that away and determine what the actual impact is. We can absolutely do this work. It's just a matter of how we adjust other work that we're currently doing.
So that means there will be some reprioritization given the resource constraint.
Correct. Yes, there will.
Okay, do we have any rough estimation for which one we're going to drop off? No.
Not yet.
Okay, there's so many uncertainties and okay, that's all my question. Thanks.
Yeah.
A similar line of questions from me to staff. It seems to me that the active phrase in here is speed up, as in speed up work. Is the work going slowly? Like it seems to me, it seems to me we're now trying to add some new direction that will change a suite of policies in the original motion. But this one is essentially taking previous direction and basically saying, get moving faster. And I'm trying to understand a little bit of what that would mean in terms of the overall sort of scope of work that that your department is tasked with.
So for this specific amendment here, we are bringing a housing update to council in Q2 next year. I think without compromising too much, we'd be able to add this additional piece, accelerate it a little bit, and bring an update in that Q2 amendment. It might not be the final version that we'd be bringing to council for approval at that time, but it would bring it sooner than we originally anticipated.
I'm trying to surmise whether this is, I mean, everybody wants to have more affordability built into it, but it seems to me that the work that we're putting forward here is all to the goal of making more housing available faster, adding more supply, and addressing the concerns around the attainability of housing in our market right now. It seems to me that the main motion itself tries to accomplish that bigger goal that would have a positive effect on the already existing work that staff have been directed to do around this. And is that sound like is that a surmising sound correct to you?
In general, yes. Vancouver plan, which this is all being done under that larger umbrella, has affordability as one of the top priorities there. So absolutely everything we do is done through an affordability lens. So we do consider that as we're bringing all the work forward.
Thank you very much. And then I might just have a question to the mover of the amendment. What is the stated goal of this, given that this work is already on stream for our staff? And the goal of the main motion is to try and move policies and direction to allow the development of more housing faster.
So thanks for the question. This amendment is also about allowing more housing faster. And I'll just note that actually a number of pieces in the tabled emergency motion are also about accelerating existing work, including the villages and the Rupert Renfrew plan. As we have heard from staff and as we should know, a lot of this is about what we're prioritizing and when. And so the motion on the table has direction to accelerate some existing work. It has some new work around shadows and floor plates. Our staff can only do so much, and so I certainly feel conscious of the impact all of this new work tabled has on work that we have already approved and directed. And it is, I think, up to us as the elected leaders to be helping provide some clear direction on those priorities. I think that this piece around our most deeply affordable and mixed income housing, non-market housing, social housing should be a priority. Affordability is a priority that we hear all of the time from our residents. And I think we should continue to give direction that it's a priority in terms of the workload that we are directing of staff.
Thanks very much. Second that. complete this, complete the business of the day. Or is- Yeah, no, I'll just remark that I think that this is work that we've already approved as a council. It aligns with our broad goal here of creating more housing faster. And noted, I think the concerns have been addressed by staff here that they think this will be able to sort of complement the other efforts and the other kind of changes that we are putting forward in the motion. So thanks very much.
Thanks. I actually was able to say much of what I wanted to say in response to that question from Councillor Klassen, so appreciate it. Again, I just want to emphasize this is really important work that gets at the affordability piece of our housing crisis. I too am very happy to see us build more, a wide range of more housing options. And we hear all of the time from the healthcare sector, from small businesses, from families that that they struggle to afford market rent or to purchase housing in Vancouver, and that we know we need to make it faster and easier to build more affordable housing at that lower end of market. We can't keep punting that work further down the road. It needs to be a priority for us alongside the many other pieces of housing work that we need to do in this housing crisis we're in, but we can't push the affordability piece further off and expect that it will happen by some magic without our clear leadership and direction on it.
This amendment probably won't change anything in the short term. So the problem, the challenge with this project is, this particular one, is it's actually very, very complex. And even if we were given direction and council gave us direction to bring it forward by Q2 2024, it would be very difficult to do. We have started the work already, but we still feel, and we could bring an interim report by Q2, no problem. But we do feel that in order to do this properly and accelerate it as quickly as possible, the soonest we could bring the recommendations would be early 2025. And it's not a matter of staff resources, it's just there's a lot of layers that we need to unravel here to make this work. So it wouldn't make a difference one way or the other, I guess is my question. No. We're still going to bring this forward as fast as we can, but the fastest I think we can bring it forward is 2025.
Okay. So just so I'm clear, if we put this language in here, it will have no effect on what you do, and it's not going to slow us down in building housing. Is that what you're saying?
It will not slow us down. No, we'll still be bringing forward the policies as quick as we possibly can. And there are different teams doing the different work. So this particular amendment will not slow us down.
Okay, well, as long as that's the case in the spirit of collaboration and working together to make sure that we build housing as quickly as possible for the residents of Vancouver, I'll support this motion.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Mayor.
this amendment.
Mayor Sim, did you have anything further?
Nope, that's it.
Seeing no further councillors on the queue, I'll call the question. All in favor of the amendment? Sorry, to be clear. Yes, sorry, habit of doing it by verbally. Yes, so we are, the vote is on the amendment that you can see ahead, and moved by Councillor Boyle. And yes, you'll be voting on your screens. Thank you. clerks, you'll have to let me know when everyone's voted.
Sorry.
And that passes unanimously. Thank you, Council. We will move back to the main queue to the now amended motion. Is there any further discussion or debate? Oh, we do have a few people still on the queue. So, Councillor Boyle, did you have anything further?
Yeah, thanks. And I appreciate council's support on that amendment. I want to note that the housing crisis isn't new, and so I am happy to support this motion. I remain a bit confused about what is new or urgent in the motion since 2 weeks ago or 3 months ago. This continues to be a significant crisis, of course, and we should be doing everything we can. So anyway, I don't need to get into a technicality. It's not clear to me how this qualifies specifically as an emergency, but I am happy to support it. I think it would have been better to have a chance for the public to see the full motion in our typical process, to be able to have people sign up and speak. But anyway, again, happy to support it. I also want to comment that a number of pieces of this motion are accelerating existing work, including the villages and pre-zoning villages. That conversation about pre-zoning, or what is really just regular zoning, zoning of the villages and implementing the land use changes of the Vancouver plan, those of us who are returning know has been an active part of that conversation. And I have been impatient in saying we need to make sure the Vancouver plan lands somewhere. So if this direction helps us get there, I'm more than happy to support it. A number of other pieces of the motion that are about studying and exploring and reporting back, also all good ideas that I hope will have an impact. I don't know that they count as bold or transformative, except in terms of what we actually do in landing these types of actions and more in land use changes. And again, this will come as no surprise to this council or the public, but it is my strong opinion that in order to make these types of transformative housing changes, we really do need to be looking at citywide land use changes that legalize apartment buildings in every part of the city, not just clustered around arterials, not just clustered around SkyTrain stations, but that we build neighborhoods that are affordable for everyone, spread across the city, and I will continue to push for that. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Boyle. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, like Councillor Boyle, I'm struggling with how this qualifies as an emergency because there's no immediate actionable stuff. Most of this is report back, and it's not the right. Well, this is I'm struggling to read through this for the first time as it's on the floor. It has been published to the city's website as a formal agenda item. There was a press release that went out that sort of vaguely alluded to this stuff, but there's been no opportunity for the public to speak to this. So it puts us at a disadvantage for those of us who haven't had an opportunity to read this in advance or caucus on this. And, you know, we recently had the Integrity Commissioner put out a bulletin about open meeting principles and how these processes are supposed to come about. So I'm a little frustrated that we're getting this as an emergency motion without an adequate chance to really review it. This would technically be the kind of space to abstain on because I don't have an opportunity to fully read through it. But I recognize that this is also a highly politicized kind of narrative that will then turn around and say, well, obviously we're not supporting the housing emergency crisis, et cetera, et cetera. I don't see a lot of emergency maneuvers in this. There's nothing, ostensibly because it is all a report back, there's nothing really to object to, but at the same time, I don't think this qualifies as an emergency motion. And I feel like it's not in the true transparent process that we should be kind of allowing the public to speak to these items beforehand and allowing the public and the media to review this material before it comes before for a council decision. And the matter of 2 weeks to do the proper process wouldn't have made a difference to any of these outcomes because they're all report backs essentially. So disappointed with how this process is being delivered. I suppose I'll vote in favor of it because there's nothing really substantial to this motion otherwise that would be objectionable. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, like some of my colleagues, Councillor Fry and Councillor Boyle, I have really major concerns about the process by which this landed on the council table. That tabling something as urgent business does circumvent the normal process we go through, where we get to hear from staff, where we get to hear from the public. We get a lot longer to contemplate on this. Again, although this was presented in the media, it was not presented to us as councillors. I will be honest, this is not good teamwork to table it in this way. I am concerned that I'll start with the positives. I mean, it's not much of it's not new bold policy. I mean, that language was used at this council table today, but it's not new, but it is bold. It's something that we have been working on as a council. Our staff has been working on, and it asks to speed it up. I have no problem with that. My only problem is if you speed up something, what don't you speed up? I said this at the council table when the majority of you voted to say speed up all permits for housing. And I said clearly, if you speed up everything, if you prioritize everything, you prioritize nothing, because staff can't do everything. They have to prioritize. And what do they prioritize? They've got no direction around what to prioritize. So I am concerned around what is getting sped up, and some of the stuff. If we were to have a more reasonable debate at a council with advance notice, with staff input, I would be supportive of some of the elements, like the implementation of the Vancouver plan and the village areas. But I would love to hear from staff, what would they have to drop to do that? They've just said they don't know. At this point, they don't know. It's hard to make a decision when I don't have the information as informed by staff as to what the implications of voting on this will have. I'm concerned about some things that are actually in this motion that we have had no discussion of at the council table, or the ability to hear from staff on, increasing the floor plate, for example, of high rises. I live in the West End. In the West End, we made a very bold move as a council to actually reduce the floor plate size, not have podiums, to do the tower in a park where and that's why we love the West End, because you don't really know there are so many towers. There's there's beautiful vegetation, trees, landscaping that shield that building. What does it mean if you take the floor plate out closer to the sidewalk? What does that do for quality of life? That one I have concerns about. The biggest concern I have, well, I've got two really big concerns, but one of them is that affordability is not mentioned in this motion. And if you don't mention affordability and you don't prioritize that, you lose track of what the real housing crisis is in the city. It's not that we don't have housing, it's that we don't have affordable housing. So what direction does this give to staff? Don't emphasize affordability? I hope not, but it's a huge, huge gap in this motion. The other I have concern about is aligning the Vancouver building bylaw with the provincial building code. Why has Vancouver become a leader in terms of sustainability and climate action? It's because we've had our own Vancouver building bylaw. I was very concerned when I heard Councillor Kirby-Young say that our bylaw makes things more expensive or cumbersome. More expensive or cumbersome. Sometimes that is the case when you're trying to do bold moves to really tackle a crisis. How could you think about reducing the ability of us to have this sort of more independent tool, a huge tool, to be able to be the leader on a global stage? So, there's a lot of stuff in here I can support, but there are some big problems and questions in my mind. I am not going to vote against the motion to move forward in a faster way measures to address affordability, because some of them I agree with, but I have no choice but to abstain because I don't have all the information. We've not been given the chance as a council to receive that from staff, and because there's some things I have grave concerns over.
Carr, that is your time.
And that's the end. Thank you.
Perfectly timed. Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, I will be brief in the spirit of let's just keep this real. And does council want to bow down to process, play politics, or build housing? And I think we want to build housing. I'm hearing words like rhetoric. I'm hearing words like playing politics. And then I'm seeing performative motions that come forward that will not change the outcome. And we heard directly from staff around the timing. So let's pick a lane. Are we playing politics and bringing a motion that is going to do nothing to change the timing and bring it forward? Or are we actually building housing? We spoke to what was new in the motion. On the affordability piece, we've talked about that. There are other mechanisms in place, like the secured rental policy, like the inclusionary zoning that we have, like the provincial mechanisms that are
Councillor
coming down that
Kirby-Young, I'm
require 2/3 of our rental to be
are at your
built,
time.
which is higher than the city is now.
Kirby-Young.
And I said earlier, to correct on the record, that accessibility and environment remained to be priorities as articulated in the mayor's motion. So let's just keep it real. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kirby-Young, and to all councillors, just please watch your clocks and your timers. Appreciate the passion around the room though today.
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Clausen.
Yeah, so listen, we're giving direction to staff here, and we are going to have numerous opportunities when staff brings back their work for the public and for council to have a look at this work. I'm extraordinarily excited about what we're seeing here. The idea that we are pre-zoning the village nodes so that we can actually get working faster on making sure that those communities have accessible housing, housing for seniors, and the kind of services that are walkable within their communities is extremely exciting to me. Addressing the building bylaw, we've heard from the people who build housing over and over again, the bylaws that we have here are different. It requires additional cost and investment to be able to do that. We have made very clear in this motion from the mayor, that we will uphold those sustainability principles, but at the federal and provincial levels and at the local government levels, there is a goal to try and harmonize. What are we hearing from every single level of government right across the government, from the Prime Minister on down? We're hearing about we need more housing. We have a dearth of housing. We have a shortage. That is driving up costs. Affordability is implicit and embedded in every decision that we make when it comes to trying to create new housing. So let's not kid ourselves. This is about creating supply and demand. It means that we'll have available housing that will be able to drive down prices, and a mix of housing for different families of different incomes. Floor plates, again, another issue that we listened to the sector when we went and spoke to them. They said the existing floor plates are limiting opportunities and also increasing the cost of developing housing in Vancouver. Shadow policies. Nothing could be more confusing than trying to go through, in my view, trying to figure out what our actual shadow policy is. Going back to staff right now and just saying, let's come up with a simple, clear mechanism that everybody understands. That is going to create more housing opportunities, more housing abilities to develop. The stationary and planning that we need to do around our SkyTrain stations. We've had those SkyTrain stations in place for nearly 40 years, and they have not been properly developed. We know that there's infrastructure that needs to go in there. So let's get that work going, and let's get the planning going concurrent on that. So I think that the fact that we are working to give direction to make sure that 29th Avenue and Nanaimo Station and Renfrew and Rupert and other SkyTrain stations, VCC Clark, are going to have proper planning for us to be able to get developing. So I think that there's just been years of delays, and part of it has been political posturing that has led us to the place that we are right now. We need to build more housing faster. That is the aim of this motion, and I'm very glad to support it. And I hope that the rest of my councillors will see that it is incredibly important that we all support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clausen. Mayor Sim, to close on your motion.
I personally love the motion, but I do want to respond. We're on. Great. I do want to respectfully respond to some of the comments that have been made in these chambers, and I say it with respect. And I do want to focus on the structure of how we drive forward. So there were comments about this process being highly politicized. I would agree with that. There were comments about how we want the public to have an opportunity to, talk about this. I completely agree with that as well. There were comments about how this process that we went through didn't really display great teamwork. And I would 100% agree with that as well. We talked about affordability and why it's important. And I would agree with that as well. And so, at the end of the day, we're trying to build housing faster. And the politicking around this was on a technicality. This motion was going to get kicked down the road. And I don't think that displays great teamwork. I think it displays a lot of politicking. And because we are in a housing crisis on multiple levels, we have to drive forward. And because of those actions, we accelerated this. And because of those actions getting busted on a technicality, the public didn't get an opportunity to speak at this time. They will in the future. And so I want us as a council it's my opinion that we need to focus on the big picture. I think the residents of Vancouver, they expect that of us, because at the end of the day, when I walk down the streets, people don't, pick sides per se. They are struggling. They want more housing built, and they want it built faster. And we can't slow down this process. And I can only speak for myself on this one, but I'm sure I speak for everyone in this chamber. We're going to do everything possible. I'm going to do everything possible to build as much, creating an environment where we can build as much housing as quickly as possible. And I'm not into playing games. And so those are all the comments I have on this one. And obviously I'm going to be supporting my motion.
Thank you, Mayor, and that is your time as well. I see no one further on the queue, and so we will go to the voting screen. Clerk, you'll let me know. And this is on the amended motion, just to be clear for all of them. And we have 9 in favor and 2 abstentions. That motion passes. Thank you, Council. And Mayor, I will return the chair to you.
Great. Thank you very much. So inquiries and other matters. Council, are there any inquiries or other matters that you want to bring up? So Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So I just have one inquiry through you to the city manager. So we all know the province published the new short-term rental regulation. So I really want to see get an update from the staff regarding the how we're going to align with the new regulation from the province, and what is our strategy to use the new tool that the province empower us to enhance the enforcement effort. I'm really keen to see a concrete plan with the timeline and deliverables. So welcome to see, to report back to council regarding that.
Thanks, Councillor. So yeah, our staff are currently analyzing the bill, and we'll provide the council with an update on that, implications for Vancouver, how we would anticipate that going forward, the problems that we expect this legislation will assist us in solving, the problems that we'll continue to face notwithstanding this legislation, particularly around enforcement, the fact that we're still going to be required to prove that that hosts are in compliant with regulation. That is in fact our current challenge. That challenge will continue, but certainly there are very powerful tools in this legislation that will make it easier for us to get to that. So happy to follow up and give council an update around that.
Thank you. Look forward to see the report back.
Great. Seeing no one else in the queue, may we please have a motion to adjourn? Great. Second, all those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.